Joining me now, Jim Trusty, attorney for President Trump and former federal prosecutor. Jim, thank you for joining us tonight. What can you tell us about the charges as you know them?
Well, we don't have the actual indictment yet. I suppose they'll give that to us at some point between now and Tuesday afternoon. Maybe they're too embarrassed to give it to us early. I don't know. But it's a combination of theoretical charges. Again, we just have a summary. We don't have the indictment in front of us, but it looks like the Espionage Act, which is kind of laughable on its face, several types of obstruction and conspiracy, and then false statements. So they're kind of throwing everything in the kitchen sink up on the wall in an investigation that even in just recent days, we have brought to light criminal obstruction behavior by the investigators. You know, it's an amazing moment, Laura. I have not built a career attacking DOJ. I was a prosecutor for 27 years. I spent 17 years there. Loved it. But this is outrageous that they actually have prosecutors who literally, among other things, and we've categorized a number of abuses, literally told an attorney that he probably won't get his judgeship if he doesn't flip his guy against the president. You know, you don't have to be a lawyer to recognize there's something really wrong with that. One of their main investigators, one of their main prosecutors, I should say, said that in front of 5 others who kind of looked down at their shoes and didn't say anything, basically committing a federal crime at the Department of Justice to try to bring home cooperation from who they viewed as an important witness. It is astounding that that's not the real headline as opposed to this indictment.
Well, NBC News justice correspondent Jim says that Trump doesn't have a defense in that this legal strategy that he has, I guess that you're leading, will just focus on discrediting the DOJ. Watch this.
Trump's lawyers are really not keen on arguing the facts here or the law or arguing that their client is not guilty of these potential charges, but they're more concerned with arguing about how the DOJ played hardball. And look, they did play hardball in this case, and we'll just have to see whether the Justice Department did anything wrong in the process of prosecuting this case.
Jim, the argument that you won't actually argue the charges, you're just going to argue the reputation of the department itself.
No, I mean, look, this was basically trying to appeal to somebody in that chain, that Praetorian Guard for the Democratic Party, to have a conscience. You know, the Attorney General is hiding behind the special counsel. He still controls special counsel, but he sat there and hid, didn't want to meet with us, didn't want to talk, didn't want to consider the ethical problems. We raised it quietly at first, loudly now, that their investigation is fatally flawed from outrageous misconduct, perhaps even criminal misconduct. But make no mistake, I mean, there are layers of defenses to these charges. And the most fundamental thing, just so your viewers get this, Laura, there's this thing called the Presidential Records Act. It is precisely dealing with presidents and former presidents and basically saying, and DOJ agreed with this years ago in a case involving Bill Clinton, that the former president gets to decide what he keeps. He should work really closely with archives. They can ask him nicely. If they get mad, they think he's holding on to too many things, they have a remedy called civil suits. There is no criminal penalty for violating the Presidential Records Act. It's a reflection of the fact that historically, before Nixon, they had completely unfettered rights to keep everything. Now we're saying at least please work with archives so we can see some of the stuff you created while you're in the White House. So that was the starting point. And by the way, Laura, one quick point on this.
Sure.
The referral from the National Archives to DOJ came from the White House, actually violating the Administrative Procedures Act, and they lied about this. They're the ones that started this thing. The politicized bureaucrats at NARA, the archivists, were happy to push it forward and into this Praetorian Guard of DOJ, who's hell-bent on prosecuting them no matter how many rules they break.
One of the claims, I believe, one of the counts will involve potential obstruction of justice, which, as you know, in my old career as a white-collar criminal defense attorney, Jim, was always considered very seriously, along with conspiracy counts, which perhaps will be involved in this indictment as well, listed in the indictment. The concern that is raised that if the president was told not to move boxes, and they have someone on video indeed moving boxes, even if there was nothing in the boxes, those particular boxes, that could be a problem. Or if tape recordings exist, that where someone tells someone, move that, that's where people get into trouble. How concerned about that are you tonight?
Yeah, well, look, not as much as you might think, because if you really know the facts, and I can't play out all the facts on TV, but if you really know the facts, there's absolutely no intent there. There's nothing to make sense. In fact, you can't even obstruct a non-crime as a starting principle. So when you have the Presidential Record Act defense, when you have declassification as a defense, then there's really nothing. I mean, he could have had a party throwing stuff in a bonfire and it wouldn't be obstruction. But the reality is these guys have been desperately grasping for an obstruction theory for a political reason, which is they keep trying to set up this, oh, Joe Biden's wonderful holding on to stuff that he stole from a skiff in 1974, but Trump just didn't answer the bell. Well, the last thing the president said to DOJ, to that same guy who extorted a lawyer, was, if you need anything, just ask. He told his lawyer at the time, show him where the stuff is kept in the storage room, and they did that. And so he says, just let us know. The next thing he gets is a letter that says, please put a lock on the door, which he does. And then DOJ goes black because that prosecutor was desperate to get a search warrant even before he had ever met the president. The Washington Post reports that prosecutor, before they even did a subpoena, was saying, how do I get the nose under the tent at Mar-a-Lago, or words to that effect. So that's what happened. They dropped off a cliff because they didn't want to cooperate with President Trump's lawyer. The president was cooperative through and through. The lawyer would have been, but they went radio black until they show up in their khakis with their laptops and their guns and their badges, and they do an unprecedented raid with really a general warrant that violates the Fourth Amendment, but we'll do a separate show on that some other time.
Jim, do you think that if President Trump, this is a rhetorical question, had said last year or recently, you know, I'm actually not running for president. I'm not going to be involved in the 2024 campaign. I'm retiring from politics. How likely would it have been that they would have gone after him?
Well, I think
0%?
The fervor would have dropped 0.5%. How about that? Really hard to figure out. What does that mean? That's less than 1, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so a really small percentage. The only way, I mean, look, there is abject hatred for President Trump in some of the circles of DOJ and the FBI. So, he could have basically saved an orphanage from a fire, and these guys would say he's lucky, and they'd still go after him. The other thing that I think affects that whole equation is Delaware, where apparently all investigations go to die. In Delaware, you've got horrific family-wide corruption, foreign corruption scandals involving the Biden family, as well as the laptop from hell, and they're slow walking the heck out of that. So, that's always cover for whatever soft deal they want to give Hunter to do something against President Trump. Say, look how balanced we are. We softened a little misdemeanor tax plea for Hunter, and we also indicted a president for something that's not criminal.
That's facially absurd. Now, the New York Times just reported tonight, Jim, that one of the charges is, in fact, a violation of the Espionage Act. Now, your reaction to that, if that is indeed the case?
Yeah, I mean, look, they're dusting off stuff that, across the board was apparently not in play when Hillary, bleach-bitted 30,000 emails that were under subpoena. But the Espionage Act includes a whole bunch of language that not just that the documents implicate national defense, but that your intent is to violate the sovereignty of the United States, to hurt the United States, or to help a foreign power. That's absurd under any theory of this case. And they've got a whole bunch of rotating theories because they can't find the facts they want. But there's absolutely nothing remotely like that. If he holds on to some documents, or people pack documents and he has them in the storage room, even if he talks about those documents or talks about the existence of them, that is light years away from the specific intent that they need for an espionage case.
Jim, what's the president's mood tonight? I know he knew this was coming, but give us a sense of what the man's feeling tonight.
It's an interesting mix, Laura. People think that when you're accused of something, it's pretty natural, at least from my client base, to really turn inward, right? You're like, what the heck? How is this happening? It's a particularly hard moment when you're innocent. And he's actually innocent. It's a little easier when you've done something wrong and you go, ah, crap, they finally caught up with me. That's not what we're talking about. So there is that kind of initial shock. I think he's got a lot of people around him expressing support. And that's a mixed bag. It kind of puts it in your head as a very depressing notion. But he also doesn't lose track of the absolute crossing of the Rubicon as a country. The historic nature of a sitting president unleashing the hounds to go after a non-criminal event, to basically incapacitate the opposition. It is an astounding third world moment. And again, that's not my shtick as an attorney to go around saying that in cases, but that's where we are as a country. And the other people that are celebrating tonight better realize that they're letting something out of the genie bottle that's going to hurt this country for generations.
Well, and the investigations can be turned on them and will be turned on them if this is allowed to stand. Jim, we appreciate it. Obviously, we're covering every aspect of this. Thank you very much.